Sweden. That's where we are at this moment, at an amazing international conference called the World Water Week Conference here in Stockholm. Scientists, experts, something like 2,000, 2,500 or so of them from all over the world converging here to discuss the issues of water, the world's water, what it means for us in terms of political situations, cross-boundary conflicts, food supplies, survival, and all of that sort of thing. It's just tremendous. My special guest is an expert in these areas. And you are?
Janine Selendy.
Janine Selendy. And you are the chairman, president, and publisher of
Horizon International, a nonprofit organization based at Yale University.
And you are also the editor of this volume. This is like a telephone book of all kinds of scientific studies, including a DVD.
Two DVDs.
Two DVDs.
4 hours of DVDs.
But water and sanitation-related diseases and the environment. Subtitle, Challenges, Interventions, and Preventive Measures. Edited by Janine M.H. Selendy. It's put up by Wiley Blackwell and Horizon International. And how many scientists contributed to this tome of work?
59 of the best experts in the world, bringing their fantastic devotion to the subjects that they're dealing with, their very hard work, their dedication in so many ways, to take time to contribute to this book because they understood the importance of bringing these subjects together. We have 37 chapters covering everything from initial discussions about water and sanitation to looking at diarrhea, which is responsible for about 2 million deaths a year, particularly for children under 5, looking at malnutrition and nutrition problems. Those areas together, the diarrhea and nutrition, then exacerbate other diseases that people get in so many parts of the world, schistosomiasis, malaria, and many other problems that people have. And so these authors have been fantastic. They are, each of them, the top experts in their area, and they have contributed to this volume.
And what it all comes down to is that the core role of water is so critical in all these issues.
Absolutely.
And one of the issues that we were talking about before we started taping was one of the areas in this multidisciplinary approach that this conglomeration of high-level research focuses on is population, which we talked about a little bit before.
Yes.
Population growth, population control, and as it relates to water and food supplies.
And also tremendous problems with migration of people because of environmental conditions such as global climate change, exacerbating drought conditions, floods, huge movement of populations around the world.
And I would think that people in America could, in a sense, understand what this is firsthand because of the huge amount of drought that is sweeping much of the United States currently.
It's been incredible. Recently, almost a huge swath from Kansas all the way to California. You could just look and see the drought all over the country, down to Texas. I just spoke with someone who was on the plane saying 110 degrees in the Midwest. And the drought is reminiscent. I can't say it's going to be like it, but unfortunately it's very reminiscent of the Dust Bowl that occurred before I was born, way back in the 30s. And
it was during the Depression period.
And during the Depression.
And it contributed to it as well.
Yeah.
And so, from my understanding, there's also something of a very realistic concern that the current ongoing, deep, if I can say, intense drought in the United States is contributing, exacerbating the the financial problems of the country.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's exacerbating them with agriculture. You have people in so many parts of the country now who are letting their livestock die because they can't do anything with them, or selling them when they can.
There's no water.
There isn't water, so literally their livestock in many places are dying from lack of water. It's so sad. But then also you have many other problems too with with the crops that are not appearing. You do not have adequate hay
for the animals.
For food for the animals. So you're not only at a water problem, but then you're not having adequate food for them.
So it's the entire food chain that is suffering.
So it's hitting the whole food chain. And many of these problems, too, are ones that, obviously exacerbated right now. But when you look at agriculture, and of course one has to be concerned with agriculture and malnutrition and the connection with water, many factors have not been adequately addressed. For example, if you have multi-cropping, instead of massive farms that are all corn or all wheat, and you intercrop with other crops.
Like rotating crops?
Rotating crops, you cut down on the use of pesticides, which of course pesticides we're concerned about because of what gets into the water supply and into your bodies.
Including things like as well, what is it? I always get these initials kind of confused. MBTE, or is it MTBE?
MTB.
It's this additive to gasoline to try to make it more effective or something. But it's in the water supplies, from what I understand, leaking into the water supplies across the United States. Has been for years, according to some research.
It's one of the many problems. One of the ones that a lot of people don't realize is mercury getting into the water supply.
Oh, really? From what source?
Power plants, fossil fuel plants. So you have in the Catskill waters, you live in New York City.
Yes.
You're getting your water from the Catskill waters. The Catskill waters have increased levels of mercury, and that mercury is a result of effluents from the fossil fuel plants in the Midwest.
In the Midwest?
Yes, because it's carried in the wind and it's along the belt going. It comes across Catskill waters and on up toward Boston.
So we're talking about so many interrelated, entangled areas. So sticking to that for a moment, the pollution of the groundwater that becomes the drinking water or becomes water for the plants that people eat or that animals eat, and then people eat if they're not vegetarian, the animals. So what's the solution for that kind of a problem?
Look,
and that's not just an American problem in essence, but doesn't that kind of a problem pervade many of the civilized countries of the world?
It pervades everywhere in the world.
Steve Steinberg here with a reminder. You are watching Dazzle Unlimited, the television series that airs every Wednesday evening at 8:30 p.m. here on Channel 79 of this system. Please make a note of the schedule. If you'd like to contact us with suggestions, comments, or to advertise on the series, our email address is dazzle@dazzleunlimited.com. But for now, please stay tuned. There's more to come on this episode of Dazzle Unlimited.
Explore new worlds. Read. Visit literacy.gov and let the journey begin.
One of our chapters focuses on how these pollutants, PCBs, for example,
Polychlorinated
biphenyls. I was involved with the battle to stop PCBs in the Hudson back in the 70s. And so, of course, I had one of the chapters is about the Hudson River and PCBs, but then it goes into so many other that chapter and another related chapter are addressing pollutants that are ubiquitous, that are getting into our bodies, into all over the world. They're getting into, for example, you mentioned getting in plants. They get into the fish. PCBs, for example, they bioaccumulate.
Yeah.
They become more and more, they concentrate, particularly in their fatty tissues, these pollutants. So that when people eat the fish, which unfortunately they do even when they're warned that they're high levels, then they are getting these pollutants into their body. One of our authors who did a story about oceans had her body tested.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Susan Shaw, and she had her body tested. She had 256 different chemicals in her body.
You mean pollutant chemicals?
Yeah, that kind
because
of
we're made of
chemicals.
chemicals. Anyway.
Pollutant chemicals. But these chemicals are getting, you can test the waters up in Alaska, you can test the waters in all different parts of the world.
Oh, but I've heard that, for example, if you're going to eat fish, you should get fish that are only sourced from the waters of Alaska or that area, or maybe the North Sea.
There are definitely, in fact, there's what's called Seafood Watch, which is being done by several organizations, including the Monterey Bay Aquarium, as a recent one. Monterey Bay Aquarium is in the United States and California.
Mm-hmm.
They have a seafood watch, and it helps you to know which seafood you don't want to eat because of accumulation of mercury, for example, and which seafood you don't want to eat because the fish are endangered because of overfishing. So you have different aspects that you have to look at and be concerned with.
Well, now I know there's a lot written about farmed, the dangers, according to some sources, the dangers of eating farmed fish versus fish from, again, off of Alaska, somewhere in that area, or
Off
the
the
North
coast
Sea.
of Alaska and north of Washington State.
Well, is there any...
And some other places have. Indeed, some fish are less polluted than others. So looking at these Seafood Watch warnings,
Mm-hmm.
which we have, by the way, on our Oceans and Coral Reef website.
You'll have to give that website address at some point. Or maybe now.
Well, the Oceans and Coral Reef website, that's magic porthole, as in a porthole in a boat.org.
Magicporthole.org.
It's also coralreefs.co, C-O, without the M.
Oh, so it's British.
We use two different names to help people find it.
Oh, all right. Okay, good. So continue. So
Well, let's look at positive side of things for a moment. How about that?
good idea.
Would that be nice?
Because I think people will also want to be asking, what are the solutions? What do I do?
Absolutely.
Hey, for example, for me, I don't like eating things that were animal types alive, but I do eat fish. And probably I'm making a bad choice, but I don't know. Everything is like dangerous these days to eat because of the pollutants and the nuclear stuff from Fukushima, for example,
Exactly.
coming across parts of the United
Can you
States
imagine
and the
how
ocean.
horrible it is for the people in Japan? And it's amazing they want to restart these nuclear power plants.
Yeah.
Is this related to water? By golly, it's related to water.
Explain how.
Where are these radioactive materials going? They go in the air and they're getting into the water.
Because the
And
Fukushima
then they're
plants are
getting
right on the coast.
And then they're getting into the seafood that the people in Japan are depending on for their livelihood. Not to mention what they would have liked to have been able to sell abroad. So it's hurting their economy, it's hurting their health directly, and it's hurting many parts of the world when you have a nuclear breakdown.
Are we facing, and we'll get, I want to get back in a moment to the question of what do we do about all this? How do we safeguard ourselves? How do we solve these problems? But as a prelude to that set of points, my question is, are we, as a species now, facing something that maybe is just going to get worse, and it's nothing we can really fix, and have we set up a kind of a system that's gradually leading us to a doomsday because of the dangers of eating food or drinking water?
I believe so strongly that there are wonderful solutions out there. That's why 20 some odd years ago we started the Horizon Solution site to look and find what is being done, what can be done, how does it work, how can this person or that organization or that country take that idea, build on it, and help to improve the world by finding what can be done and moving it forward. So in our doing this, we take an integrated approach. We look at the economic, environmental, health aspects very strongly, education, all of these different concerns. And we look at subjects from agriculture, we were talking about drought and crops, to wastewater.
Get this book here?
Yes, they can get it. Easiest way is Amazon.com. If you're from a developing country, our publisher Wiley is making copies available at vastly reduced cost, so that it can be available everywhere. Now the DVDs in here, 4 hours of DVD, have several videos from, among others, the Carter Center, because some of our
Jimmy
authors
Carter.
worked with Jimmy Carter, yes, in the Carter Center. And the DVDs have all the images from the book, but it has a short abstract that's very attainable for the lay audience. You will not have any trouble understanding any of the abstract.
Good.
You're a scientist, but I meant you
Well,
were a lay person.
I'm scientifically oriented.
And it has every image, 500 images from within. Here's the list: 525 illustrations, tables, and maps from the text, and additional text not found in the book. And it has 16 videos, plus
great.
4 other video clips, so that people everywhere in the world can enjoy. If they can't understand all of the text, they can take the DVD and share it with their organization or individuals or their classrooms or people off in some remote area, and be able to help explain to them, for example, about guinea worm.
Guinea worm?
Yeah, guinea worm.
I don't know what that is.
Well, guinea worm is a horrible disease
Oh.
where it only affects humans. Now, this is a fantastic example of a solution. What the Carter Center did, and they working with the local countries, they went community to community to community, working with the local people, helping show them what they're talking about. What is this worm? Show them larvae. Show them pictures of how they can take the guinea worm out of the human body, and the importance to avoid this by not putting your body in water where you can spread the guinea worm disease. So there were 3.5 million cases, reported cases, of guinea worm in 1986.
Globally?
Globally. In preparation for coming to this wonderful World Water Week and having discussions such as with you, I asked our authors to give me updates, and again, they were marvelous and got me updates. And on the guinea worm, as of this last week, from 3.5 million cases in the world, there are 448 reported cases.
400, not million, but 448.
448 reported cases. They changed the name of the chapter when they got started writing it from guinea worm disease reduction to guinea worm eradication.
Wow.
It will be the first disease after smallpox to be eradicated.
Steve Steinberg here with a reminder. You are watching Dazzle Unlimited, the television series that airs every Wednesday evening at 8:30 p.m. here on channel 79 of this system. Please make a note of the schedule. If you'd like to contact us with suggestions, comments, or to advertise on the series, our email address is dazzle@dazzleunlimited.com. But for now, please stay tuned. There's more to come on this episode of Dazzle Unlimited.
These hands hold tight. These hands love. These hands support. These hands create. These hands save lives. To empower your hands to help make a difference, call the American Heart Association at 877-242-4277 for a CPR class near you. These hands are wise.
so many of the illnesses of diarrhea, and I was talking about before how many people are suffering, they're caused by bacteria, viruses, parasites.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of these, particularly bacteria, they're transmitted, such as E. coli. That's one of the ones you would know very much in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Transmitted by what's called the oral fecal route.
Mm-hmm.
So when people get feces on their hands,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow it touches the food,
Mm-hmm.
and then it comes to your mouth and it's very...
I went to a
transmitted.
restaurant here. This is true. This is a while ago. I went to a restaurant here in Stockholm, and I ordered some food. It looked really good and everything. It was a nice restaurant. And then I kind of peered over the counter at what the chef was doing. And with his bare hands, he was taking noodles and meat and stuff and putting it on the plate. And eventually he brought it out. He said, "Here's your dinner, sir." And I said, "Take it back. I'm out of here. I'm not touching that."
That's why you really have to look, when you're looking at water and sanitation, it's water, sanitation, and hygiene.
Yeah, that's
There's
the basic thing.
So many children in daycares. They've done studies to show that in a daycare, how many people have a place to wash their hands readily available.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
A lot of diseases are transmitted so readily by lack of adequate hygiene. But when you're looking, let me give you a couple hard facts about sanitation. One is that there are over 2.6 billion people with no adequate sanitation in the world, no toilets. There are places in the world where 40%, Southeast Asia is one of the highest, people defecate in the open. They have no toilet at all. And when they do that, the feces, Haiti is a good example of where this is happening, inadequate sanitation. The feces gets into the water in the river. It carries the cholera vibrio down the river, and more people are getting cholera, which is handleable in a developed country, but not so much in a developing country. And so it's looking at getting adequate water. And speaking of water, there are over 1 billion people with no adequate water, drinking water.
1 billion people on this planet. And that's currently, right now it's 2012.
Well, they might estimate 800 million to 1 billion.
Okay. So then we get to some other additional issues that relate directly to that, and that includes, as I'm sure you know, the projections of what Earth's human population will become. The year 2050, the projection is something like 7 billion humans.
No, the estimate. One of the most recent estimates, which I just read, is by 2075, over 9 billion.
Well, that's even more. So with the projected increase of the number of humans on this planet, that means there are going to be, unless there's a change, more and more people, billions more, creating more and more waste, and having to deal with a limited, static, essentially static resource, the amount of water on this planet Earth. And so you're talking about diarrhea and other pollutants and disease-causing things in the waters of the world or waters of certain parts of the world and how to deal with it. In that perspective, what are some solutions?
Well, let's take that another step, too. Our professor with whom we share our base at Yale, Robert Wyman, is one of our authors for this book, and he wrote a chapter about population. And when you're looking at the population, I mentioned migrating populations, but you also have to look at the water and food supplies for the people.
Yes.
And when you're talking about the drought in the United States, or you're looking elsewhere in the world where you have inadequate food, it just exacerbates the conditions tremendously to have very high population. Now, one of the wonderful things is that with increased education, it has been shown, such as in Mexico, increased education, then people have less children.
But isn't there another issue that in many cases people choose to have as large a family of children? I mean, I'm referring to as possible because they want that financial support. If you have more and more children, as they grow older and become adults, they work, presumably, and can earn money and support the parents and take care of them, etc. Isn't that an issue as well?
Well, we're looking at two different situations. One I was mentioning was in a very poor situation where they would have children because there was so much death. But now, for example, cutting back on diseases is a tremendous move toward helping people to have better life and be able to avail themselves of education. And then what you're discussing is on another level. Because if you talk about in developed countries, there too, though, you look at developed countries, the population's gone down in France and in many other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So they're having less children, which is, maybe it's going toward a new situation because we are very heavy consumers in the developed countries. And when you're heavy consumers, that means more pollutants from all the sources, unless you're in a country like Sweden where everything we have to do is recycle, and let's cut down on the waste, and let's cut down on what we're consuming and drinking, and doing wonderful things to protect the environment in their country. In fact,
But even with these few examples, what you're saying is there are solutions.
yes, so it's not, as you were asking before, it's not doom and gloom. It's finding the answers and helping one another to further knowledge of what can be done.
Right. Janine, thank you very much. Janine Selendy, Chairman, President, and Publisher of Horizon International. I've got it right.
And I thank you very much, and thank your audience for being here with us.
Yeah, I thank you too. And I thank you too.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Steve Steinberg. Hope you've got something out of tonight's Dazzle Unlimited. And hope you join me with another special guest next week on another episode of Dazzle Unlimited. See you then. Good night.